Alright, new player's guide to the Chinese part 2. So you haven't seen part 1, you might want to first, but we're going to do the same build order here just in first person and explain as we go. I'll talk about what we're trying to achieve, focus on, and some things with China more generally. Usually I'd also cover some of the more fundamental Age of Empires 4 stuff for new players, but with China being so complicated, I'm just going to keep everything China specific. For more universal info, you might want to check out one of my earlier guides, like an English, French, HRE, that kind of thing. Or you can find me on my Twitch stream, which there is a link in the description. And again, there's a link to the written build order in the description as well. But for now, let's jump into the game. So we're going to queue up a Vil, we're going to make a mill, and we're going to send our scout away. We're going to move our sheep over to the mill, and then get them nice and close so our Vils gets them close. Then we rally on to gold. Just for 2. So you notice I actually didn't put it on berries here, and this is actually quite a good spawn to show this off. We don't want to have our mill deniable because all of our food's going to be around it. It's kind of like we kind of want it to have under the TC or the safety of the TC, and if we put it all the way out on berries, we'd be very, very vulnerable to Dark Age aggression. And because we don't really need to get on the berries anytime soon, we don't need to worry about that little bit of extra efficiency with not having an extra mill. The other part about its placement that's really important is that we want it to be a couple tiles away from the TC. If not, then our villages might drop off at the TC and we lose out on that potential tax revenue at the mill. The other thing that's important about its placement is that you need to have it just in some vicinity of your wood line that you're going to put your lumber camp on. It doesn't have to be close, it just has to be close enough that it's going to cover the Imperial Academy influence, will cover both the mill and the lumber camp. If you can get the mining camp in there as well, that's a great bonus, but it's really not that important. What's important is that we get the mill and the lumber camp because that's where all our Vils are going to be gathering. Other than this, the initial part of the game is really simple, and I've tried to make the build order like that on purpose. Some build orders do a bit of wood gathering early on and then getting a village, but you don't actually need to do that, and it's not actually that much less optimal, if at all, to do it this way. So this keeps it nice and simple, and also quite similar to the other builds I've done as well. Once we get 400, 200 here, we're going to age up with the Imperial Academy. So I've just hotkeyed 3 of my villages to make sure that I can pull them away nice and easy. Now let's drop off these sheep. I got 10 here, which is probably about a nice average. 10 to 12 is probably what you're going to get. And then once we get close, I'm actually going to force drop off for a little bit of speed here and then go over to start building. There we go, nice and easy. And then we're going to rally on to wood. So we want to leave 8 on food while we age up. That's so we have enough food for Imperial officials and villagers, which is a little bit different. Also going to want to take these guys off gold and put them onto wood. And we're just going to put them on a straggler first, and then go to the lumber camp. And it's because we don't quite have enough wood for the lumber camp yet. These 3 that are on the Imperial Academy are going to go to wood straight after, and we're going to go up to about 8. Again, this part now makes it, there's a lot of sort of like little bit of micromanagement and clicking involved initially, but then it becomes pretty straightforward. And yeah, that is by design. The next thing that's most important once we hit feudal is we're going to have an Imperial official come out of the academy, and because we didn't gather too much in the way of gold, we are going to make sure he does a tax drop off before he supervises. So now we're on 8, we want to rally back to food. I've just got there in time. And once these guys get to 100 on wood, that's when we know we can make a lumber camp and we can make a house. Nice and easy. The IO come out, so we're going to do this. We can actually shift Q this, by the way, so I can do shift Q that and then shift E left click on the mill so he's supervising, and now we can make another one. And we're going to do the exact same thing again with the IO coming out, doing a tax drop off, and then supervising the lumber camp. Now, if you don't want to do that little bit of extra work with the tax drop off, because it is a little bit of extra work, you can just gather more gold at the start. If you get up to 105 gold. That's enough for 3 IOs because they cost 35 gold each. I think my math is correct there. Then that's a way that you don't have to worry about microing, particularly as I just fucked it up there. And then the third one that comes out is going to probably supervise this stables. Third or fourth can supervise. It doesn't actually matter. Don't worry too much about trying to optimize. Well, don't worry about trying to optimize really anything with China. It's far more important to get the gist of it, as and you'll see that with pros as well. And it's because it's going to be a big deal just to be doing the right sort of things with the build than it is to get every little detail right. And that's because, honestly, because they're a lot more complicated than other civs, than most civs. So I'm going to take 2 of these to add to sheep because I think that'll help be the most representative, but maybe I'm wrong. This village was slightly late, but it's about to finish. We're still on this. I need to be on wood now. We'll go to like 14, 15 on food. Slightly less is fine too. Now we've got all 4 imperial officials out, so the 4th one is just running around collecting tax and getting us gold. That's awesome. Didn't actually drop these off. That's great for me. And now ideally would be like harassing and stuff with these horsemen, but I'm not really going to worry about that too much because it's too much for me to play and talk at the same time, as I've learned with other videos. So I'm not going to worry. The first upgrade we're going to get for eco, and we're basically just getting upgrades as our gold comes in. It's going to be horticulture because the food is the most important, and then it's going to be double broadaxe as we get more onto wood, and then we want to be taking this guy off of stables onto archery range because our archer production is going to be what's really important. We can still make horsemen as much as we like. It's always good, but the archer mass is what's the priority here. And that is because they're our main DPS dealers, and we need a lot of them because, I'll talk about this a little bit later, because we don't really have special units as China. So we really rely on just having a shit ton of them instead. So at this point, it's pretty much just, we're just making a bunch. The ideal here is to sort of poke and prod and be aggressive and force our opponent to make units and not just go castle or multiple TC or whatever. But that's going to depend on your sort of ability to multitask. It's really hard in general, and of course really, really hard with China. Because you have to sort of micro your economy a lot. I'll talk about that a little bit later too once we get past the build part. But yeah, it's not easy stuff. So give yourself some slack if you feel like you're struggling to do too much. So we got wheelbarrow there. The next upgrade we're going to get is Imperial Examination. We're also going to get a blacksmith because that's going to help our archers. And then the whole time we try to make archers where we can. Horsemen as well where you can, but archers are the priority. So make sure that the wood goes there first. And then we should have a bit of gold there. Yep, there we go. And then we get Imperial Examinations. And of course the next gold is going to go onto the blacksmith. Now, these guys are running out a little bit, so we're going to take them onto the deer. Now, I'm going to take a bunch of them. I've taken 9 there. I'm actually going to go up to 13, which my math is terrible. But we're going to take them over there. And we're going to take the IO as well. And then with this, we can do a village. And we can also do a tower, which will help us be protected. Because this is 8 slots and 5 slots. And of course, we can have our army here, which helps us as well. Should be getting these upgrades. And this is going to allow us, the other thing we need really important is to get survival techniques, which will be the next of our gold. So there's just a lot of stuff going on. So like I said, it really isn't new play friendly. But this way is easier, I think, than going professional scouts, which requires a lot more micromanagement, both to collect the deer and then also with keeping them alive if you get pressured. At least this way, you only have to think about this side of your base, which is actually easier because you don't have to worry about your gold getting harassed, and then this part of your base, which is a lot more intentional and probably more difficult to manage, but at least it's in one spot. What I've done here is I've just refreshed the lumber camp like you always should. But the thing to keep in mind with China when you refresh the lumber camp is you need to make sure the IO also changes what he supervises. So he needs to go and supervise that when you move it. Always just have one lumber camp. Don't try to have like two next to each other so that some of the returns aren't supervised. So we're still ramping up the wood, and this is really the end of the build. We're getting weird +1, we're getting +1 attack, and now we're getting defense. We've got all of our eco upgrades that we need. Of course, we don't need the mining one. We've got the imperial examinations, and we're still pumping units. Now this is sort of the point where you decide what it is you're going to do, and whether we're going to all in or not. Now this whole time we should be sort of attacking. Like the sort of 9-minute mark is probably quite late to be doing a big push, so we would have wanted to do it earlier, but again there's a lot going on with China, which makes it quite tough. But yeah, you want to be sort of deciding whether you're going to, or you want to be doing pressure and then deciding whether you're going to all in or whether you're going to age up. If you are going to all in, you're going to want to get siege engineering and go for rams and go on that way. You might want to add even more archery ranges and really pump out using that wood. The other thing that's really important, if you are going to do the all-in, the other thing you need to keep in mind if you're doing an all-in is food. So the easiest thing to do is just go on your berries, but you can also, like in this case, we can go on these deer, or we can do a Barbican and go Song Dynasty and put that on our boar or deer for safety while we're being aggressive, and that is quite helpful because we're going to have the gold for it. We just need to spare the food for it, which we might need to cut production for, but that's okay. So that's one way to do it with the feudal aggression. The other way is we just sort of cut. We don't worry so much. We cut production. We don't worry so much about wood. We can put these guys on either food, so we can chuck them on here, or we can put them on gold if we need more gold, and then that will. I can make a village in a sec. That will actually no, I'll show the Barbican thing. That will allow us to go to castle instead, and then we can make lances. And we can go kill them with lances while upgraded. If we still have horsemen and archers left, we can upgrade archers and horsemen and kill them that way. So we're going to do the Barbican play. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to force shop off here, and then I'm going to go protect these deer. So with the Barbican, we need 400, 200. So it's really just the food that's a problem there. But we've got it easy peasy. We go Barbican, and then we just chuck down the... Actually, where is the boar? That would be a lot easier to show. Oh, he's over there. Doesn't matter. If you do go for the boar with 8 vills, you can get the boar while the Barbican also helps shoot, so you're not going to lose a villager. I think I showed that better in the first video, to be honest with you. I did get the village. But this also works too. If you do this, it is good, especially if you're adding more production, that you just take one of the ones that's supervising production and then take him to supervise. If you have this many villagers on something, you really should, if you can, have it supervised. So sweet, that's there, and this houses 8, which makes it nice and protective for this situation, and is better than what you would normally do, which is having 5, because that's how much a tower can fit. So that's quite good. So with villages and Barbican, it allows us to fit more. Now I'll show just sort of how to redirect your villages when you have an IO in your villages quite easily here. The build is all out of the window, by the way. Don't worry about that. Just as soon as we got to the point when I was talking about attacking, that was the build. So don't look at my resources. But if we're going to redo or redirect our villages, what we want to do is we grab everybody. We can actually do it all at once. We'll have our villages selected first. So we go QW click to make the mill. And then we can actually tab to the IO. So you can see the IO is not moving. But if we hit tab, it goes first tab goes to the villages. Second tab goes to the IO. If we hit E and then left click the mill, he'll then move and start supervising as soon as he gets there. So even though there's a little bit more micro involved with moving IOs around with your eco, it is actually not that hard to do it all at once. So it's a few more clicks, but it's not a lot of like moving around and mouse work or anything like that, which is a little bit nice in terms of quality of life. Anyway, yeah, so there's a few things to cover. I'll try to cover just the China specific stuff. So bear with me as I do a little bit of pausing and a little bit of yapping, but hopefully it's quite helpful. Okay, so let's pause and just yap a little bit about China in general. So like I've said, it's not a new player friendly civ at all. It's one of the hardest for sure. I think, at least for me, I think it is the hardest civ in the game. But it is nice. It is fun to play. It's very popular. And with a number of people asking me to cover them, I thought it was good to give it a go. But please do keep in mind, like, it's not simple at all. So just bear with, I guess, if you are looking to pick them up, which if you're at this point in the video, I'm sure you're probably well aware. But I want to talk a little bit about sort of things that make them difficult, and some of the things that are actually good about them or easy about them, nice quality of life, because they do have some stuff, China, which is really, really nice to play with. That's actually quite, if you play them a lot, it can be quite hard to go to other civs and not have those things anymore. So the hardest thing about the civ, hands down, is trying to manage their macro, their economy. You kind of have to micro your macro in a way that other civs don't have to. So the other thing that's also quite difficult with them, which is less spoken about actually, is about their units, their military. So their advantage with China is that you have a lot more units, but the units themselves aren't really special. Spearmen, horsemen, archers, especially for this feudal build, are just stock standard. There's nothing different about them, which is quite unusual. Most civilizations will have something. But your advantage as China is that you have a lot more of them. Because of your economy and your production speed, you get a lot more units out faster, rather than having stronger ones. And what that means is that you need to have the right unit composition, because if you have it wrong, the difference in the unit strength can be the thing that runs you over. Whereas other civs, you'll be like, so Macedonia at the moment, as of January 26, is just make Radari because they're so strong. But China doesn't have that. Or as Macedonia for feudal, ranking guard with +2 armor. But that sort of thing, it's not something China has, which makes it quite difficult. Your advantage is having more units, and you need to make sure you have the right unit composition. It's a bit easier in feudal because there are fewer unit types, which is what we're trying to do here. With this build, a little bit of a difference when you are against night civs, which I'll talk about a little bit later, as you do need to change the comp, and that's a good example of why it's important to have the right composition against the right opponent. But that is something that makes China a little bit more complicated. Of course, the other things that's a bit more complicated about them is the imperial officials. You do sort of need to micro them around your base. The good thing is at least losing them is not as big of a deal because you can make them out of the Imperial Academy, and you can also like sort of see them by looking around with the buttons, which is quite helpful. If you ever get a second, you can sort of just do a little stock take to make sure they are where they're supposed to be. But also, like I showed with, like, you know, moving villages around, it's a little bit difficult. And the other thing that's quite difficult, of course, is particularly with China and doing these aggressive builds, is that you are needing to get onto a lot of food around the map, which is difficult to do. And also because you need to sort of predict when you need to do it, it's quite easy as China to just run out of food entirely and lose the game because you haven't been producing for a while. That happened to me a lot while I was preparing to make this guide. That said, yeah, a lot of the difficulties, there are a lot of great quality of life with China. So the first thing that's the most useful is the Tang Dynasty Scout Vision bonus. So you start with this. It's essentially a map hack. Your scout has much larger vision, like much larger vision than other scouts, which means getting sheep is a lot easier. The field of view in which you can sort of see them and move to pick them up is so much higher. You can scout the opponent's base a lot easier. You can see the opponent's scout as you're running around without them seeing you, which is awesome in terms of, you know, the mind games of scouting and routing to try to take a better route on your opponent without them knowing. Similarly with scouting their base, you know, you could be able to see everything they have without them even knowing your scout was there. So that's huge. And then, of course, they also get another map hack in Castle Age with the Imperial Palace, which lets you, there's a huge outpost in itself, but then with a field of vision, and then also the unique ability shows you where all the enemies' villages are, which is great for raiding, especially in Castle Age. When you're looking to go into lances and sort of play the map, it can be an absolute game changer, really. I've definitely won games just by being able to raid the right location because of that ability. The other, obviously, huge quality of life thing with China is imperial officials. Yes, it is difficult with needing to move them around, but what they do in moving around is just absolutely insane. So supervision is great for, you know, getting ticks faster or units out faster. The bonus speed is becomes like a great, like, oh shit, catch up button. If you need archers, you can spam out a bunch of archers. If you need spearmen, because he's just got castle and he's going to have knights in your base, you can make spearmen. If you need an upgrade really quickly, like +1 range defense or something, you can do that. The supervision speed, it says 150% faster on the thing, which at first sounds, you might think like that means it's like 150% of their normal speed, but it does mean 150% faster. So it's working at 2.5 times the original speed, which is huge. Honestly, kind of overpowered. The other thing supervision gives, of course, with economy is that it gives you 20% resources extra that are dropped off. So the thing about that is it's not just you're gathering faster, it's that it's resources being created out of thin air when they're dropped off. And that means you get more for your buck. So each tree, each sheep, what have you, you're getting more out of that, 20% more, as long as it's dropping off to something that's supervised, and that's incredibly powerful. And you don't run out as quickly for that, which is huge, especially with China, where you do feel like you run out, especially like sheep, really, really quickly. So that's a big thing. The other thing, of course, because imperial officials don't do enough, is taxes. It's been nerfed a couple times, but it's still super OP. Incredible gold income that you really just don't need to be mining gold in the feudal age, as a huge leg up, especially if you do get the examinations upgrade at the Imperial Academy, which means that you're just getting so much gold in just from one Imperial official running around that you can get all your upgrades and everything without needing to lift a finger, which is super strong and super OP. And then as you scale into the game, that scales as well. So it's a constant source of a lot of gold income for not needing to do anything. And of course, like I talked about before, with when you're doing this build or most builds with feudal age with China, is that you don't need to mine the gold, so you don't need to worry about being harassed there, which would otherwise be quite a disadvantage. The other thing that's awesome about China, takes a little bit more of like of economy management, but the extra sort of garrison or defenses that you have as China. So we've got the village, which is fantastic for housing extra villagers. We've got the Barbican for Song Dynasty, which gives us the Song villager bonus, which is great, but also it's a really, really strong sort of mini keep to protect resources, food, gold, whatever it is you need, sometimes both. I just had a game before which I had food and boar protected by, I had boar and deer, sorry, protected by Barbican, which was just incredible. So that sort of thing is huge, and you're getting a bonus for it, which sort of not necessarily scales through the game, but is useful throughout the game. And of course, the other thing that doesn't get talked about too much with China, but I just like playing against them as an absolute nightmare, is the build speed. So if you need to build up an outpost in a rush, or production in a rush, if you get howlers, you need a bit of howlers in a rush. It's so easy to do it, and those are all sort of quality of life things which make China really, really strong, and just really, really nice to play. Even though you've got to deal with all the sort of microing your macro stuff, which is not quite exactly quality of life, but it's big. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about sort of the intent with this build, and what we're trying to do with China. So I think I mentioned it before, but basically what we're trying to do is leverage our economy to make, and our production speed, to make as many units as we possibly can and go pressure our opponent. Now, there's other aspects to this which make that great, particularly as the feudal age extends and scales. We're going to be in a better position than others because of the economy that continues to improve, and we can just keep pumping out more and more units. Even if another civ might be a little bit stronger in the early feudal age, like a French or something, or a Macedonian, maybe not so much Macedonia, but like a Mongol or a French, which can be quite difficult to deal with. And then we can sort of deal with it early and then scale into the game. So that's really nice. Going stables first is a bonus, because it does sort of show to your opponent that you're going. You could be going for pro scouts, which a lot of Chinese players do, which means that they might be responding to you in the wrong way, and then all of a sudden you've got a heck ton of horsemen in their face, and then behind that they then have to make spears, and then we make essentially 1 billion archers and have to deal with that, which can create to a bit of a mismatch in feudal and make our feudal all-in stronger than it might have otherwise been. That's really important as well. Another flow-on effect, one after the other, is that if we can keep our opponent in feudal, and while we have a whole bunch of units, because we have the superior economy behind that, as long as we can keep our stuff on the map safe, we're going to be in a better spot, and he's sort of never going to be able to go castle, whereas we can switch to go castle whenever we want, because we're going to have the gold for it. We can just cut production and then spend the food. On the flip side, if he tries to go castle, he's going to halt his production, And then if you can sort of see him going for it, he's got fewer units, you can take the fight, or you see him even building a landmark in his base. That's when you sort of have the all clear to go dive and kill him. So you kind of feel like you always have agency when you're playing this way, as long as you are aggressive early enough. Like I said, sort of going at that 9-minute mark is really a little bit too late, but the difficulty with this and with China is trying to balance being aggressive while balancing your economy at the same time, which is really hard. And something I quite struggled with when I was doing this build in preparation for making this guide. So do bear that in mind as well. The other thing just on this is when you choose to go Song Dynasty, this is really, really important, the Barbican, I feel, for protecting your food. When you do land and extended feudal age. So don't be too scared. As long as you sort of get to the point where you've got the 200 gold, don't be too scared to cut production for a little bit and then get this out in a safe place, protecting probably your food if you're in an extended feudal age, to make sure that you are going to have the food income, because really one of your lose conditions is just purely that you're going to run out of food and you're like, oh shit, you've got this situation right here. And you're like, I can't get my food in time without dying. And that happens to me a lot as well. So something to keep in mind and a reason to go for Song. And of course, Song Dynasty also gives us the extra 33% villager speed, which you would have seen previously with a lot of or you may have seen with a lot of 2 TC builds from China. But you don't, even with 1 TC, it still is a huge, 33% boost, which is huge. It means they produce in 15 seconds, not 20, which is a pretty big economy boost. So just things to keep in mind. Now, variation. I talked a bit about what do we do against night civs. If you've seen some of my other guides, you probably already know the answer, but we do need to play differently. The composition we want to go for is spearmen, horsemen. We cannot go archers into straight knight. So instead of opening with stables, you need to open with barracks and make sure that you're sort of defending your wood line and your food with spearmen early. And then we can add in, instead of adding an archer range, we'd add in the stables, and we would make a bunch of horsemen, and you'd be boosting, so supervising whichever one that you feel you need more of. There's no right or wrong there, as long as you're producing spearmen and horsemen kind of non-stop, and you probably should be supervising one of them at any point in time. The other thing you'll need to change as a bit of variation is you don't need as much on wood. You need more on food. And where that becomes really difficult playing against French or Rus or JD or even Mongol to an extent, if they do have a lot of, or they're going for a lot of feudal knights or knight equivalents, is you do sort of need to go collect your food on the map. And that makes you prone to night raids. So don't be afraid to make a lot of walls or make a lot of outposts to make sure that your villas are defended, and sort of stick spears around everywhere to ensure that you aren't losing villages here and there. It's really hard to do though, so don't worry too much, or don't feel too bad if you do lose some villages, but because your economy will be a lot better than theirs. But it's just something to be aware of. And then once you get a lot of horsemen and a lot of spearmen, you can sort of take the fight straight up. If he has, mass knight only, of course you just make spearmen. But if he's knight archer, then you want your horsemen to be attacking the archers and your spearmen to be attacking the knights. And otherwise, you can still play it out the exact same intent. Or what you're trying to achieve with the build. It's just a little bit different because you're only going to have spearmen rather than archers alongside your horsemen. But yeah, give it a go. It is a little bit more difficult and plays a little bit different, so you'll just have to sort of try it out and get the feel. It's particularly for the split between horsemen and archers, but yeah, just make as many of each as you can. And actually China does a decent job in that situation because you can pump out so many, particularly spearmen. The thing that becomes difficult is just protecting your economy while you're doing that, which is just something that's hard about China, and especially so in that matchup. Cool. So I actually think that's it. I don't think there's so much more complicated stuff you can do with China or talk about with China, but I don't think it's going to be of any help to a new player, or is really that important compared to the rest of the stuff anyway. the thing I talk about China being complicated or complex, but really it's there's just a lot to do. They're quite simple once you get the hang of it and you can sort of remember the different things you need to do. The difficulty is executing and making sure that you are doing all those things with your economy, especially, and then also making sure you're making the right units, scouting, responding, that kind of thing. Hopefully it's a lot more simpler doing a build like this and then going into feudal aggression rather than trying to play into a castle or longer game where there's just a lot more you have to think about. So hopefully that simplifies it for you. Though in saying that, I know in making these videos, I can already tell, like, I know it doesn't come across very simple at all. So hopefully there is some value there, but I apologize if it's really not that clear, or I've overcooked it. I'm sorry if I have. The other thing I just wanted to say to finish it up is that if you are looking to transition out of this, and going into castle, the good thing is, yeah, you can pretty much always sort of halt and go into castle with this build because you do have that goal behind you. If you go castle, go for imperial palace in the front of your base, so you get all the outpost vision, and then you've got the ability that can find enemy villages. Make stables, or if you probably having 2 stables as you go up, you might want to supervise one of them, and then you want to spam lances. You can also upgrade your archers and horsemen if you have heaps of them, but really the lances are going to be the thing that can carry you in the castle age, and you want to sort of end the game there if you can. But yeah, that's pretty much it. China's really, really tough. If you do find your first few games to be difficult or overwhelming, stick with it for a little bit. Some of the things are really, really fun, and feel really like good and satisfying in playing them. I played a heck ton of games with them, and things like Tang Dynasty with the scout vision is something I struggle to go back without. Same with Imperial Palace. Same with supervising production buildings. Like, those are all things which feel really great. Barbican is another one. Oh my gosh, being able to secure a boar or deer. So yeah, I hope you enjoy. I hope this helped. Do stick with it if you find those first few games being difficult. But if you are finding China doesn't click, maybe check out one of my earlier videos for a different civilization that might be a little bit easier, especially if you are a new player. But yeah, enjoy. Any sort of feedback or anything else you want me to cover, please do let me know in the comments. I really appreciate people watching these, and I really appreciate people leaving me comments as well. It does really help, and it's quite motivating to make this stuff too. So I do appreciate you all. Thank you very much. And yeah, I hope to see you in the next one. Cheers, guys.